it is just so crazy to see how perverted this generation and America has gotten. I mean, we have literally gone so far from the truth. We've literally gone so far from the Bible, so far from moral standards, and deeper into immorality, deeper into perversion. And so like I was sharing, number one, it started, I believe, with the feminist movement.
Yeah. So what's crazy about that is I feel like a lot of people watching, they're going to think feminist movement. Obviously, you know, you think of a feminist and you would think one of their biggest ideas that they push is don't sexualize women, right?
Okay. Yeah. And so on that, right? So I'm studying kind of like a little bit behind this whole feminist movement. And this really kind of took place 50s, 60s during this time, right? And so you had a lot of these women that were coming out and trying to stand up for like women's rights and things like that, all that stuff. And during this time, something in particular came out that literally revolutionized America and revolutionized the world. And it was this thing called the pill. And what the pill was it was, many of us might know what this is, birth control. And so now women started taking this pill and they started to become, you know, obviously more sexually active, going out fornicating, sleeping around, knowing that, I mean, they can go and do these things and not get pregnant, right? And so literally that started and launched the sexual revolution.
Yeah.
And how people viewed the home, how people viewed family, and how people viewed intimacy. And so now you have these women going around, they're sleeping around. You have these men that are, you know, obviously taking advantage, sleeping around with all these women. And during this time, guess what comes out? Playboy.
Wow.
And Playboy literally becomes one of the biggest, I mean, magazines and publications at the time. I mean, literally, I forget the exact stats on it, but I mean, so many people, not just in America, but all over the world, owned a Playboy magazine.
Wow.
And it was this thing called the sexual revolution, right? Because we're talking about these three main things that I believe has gotten us deep into this hole of sexual perversion, right? So we're talking about these three things. The feminist movement is number one. Number two was the sexual revolution, which I believe the feminist movement definitely headed it, right? And spearheaded that sexual revolution. So during the sexual revolution, it's like so perverted now. So perverted now. I mean, during this time, pornography became big, right? Films now started showing more nudity during this time. And like, you think about what's going on in the world during this time, the 50s, 60s, 70s. I mean, this is when like you had the hippie movement, right? And like people just going out, doing a lot of drugs, right? Getting into like spiritualism. And I'm not talking about serving God either, the one true God. I'm talking about people that are starting to get into demonic doctrines and people that are starting to literally just like basically do witchcraft.
Yeah.
And so like people are just sleeping around. It's this whole sexual revolution, right? They're doing all this nasty, perverted stuff. And number three is the civil rights movement. And so many people are like, wait, what? Like the civil rights movement, what does that have to do with anything? So the civil rights movement, obviously we know, was a time when obviously people of color or minorities, they came in, and it was this huge thing with Martin Luther King, right? I don't need to go too much into detail on that because we pretty much know for the most part what that was. But it wasn't just civil rights for people of color or minority people. It was civil rights for gay people.
Wow.
And so at this time, I mean, you guys got to look into this stuff and do a little bit of research on this because it's crazy. During this time, because of the sexual revolution, so many like gay bars were opening up, gay nightclubs were opening up, and I'll never forget something that I read is literally there was a police raid that happened on, and I can't remember the name of it, but you can look it up. Those of you watching, you can look it up and you can read the whole story on it. There was a police raid that happened to basically a transgender nightclub in New York. And they basically came in and it turned into a mess, right? It turned into a riot. I mean, cops were fighting the people and the people were fighting the cops, right? Things got really ugly really fast. but literally like this spearheaded civil rights is gay rights type thing, you know? And so now like being gay and, you know, transgenderism and lesbianism, all this stuff, sexual perversion became a norm in America. And now we're at where we are today because of those things that took place in America.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so clear. If you look back at these 3 key events in America, it's so clear the fruit of that we're seeing today. A generation that is lost, a generation that is so consumed in perverted thinking and demonic strongholds. And, you know, I just want to ask you, where did this start on the spiritual side? So we're looking at, you know, these key events in America, but spiritually, what was going on and what agenda was really being pushed demonically?
Spiritually, it was Jezebel. And I say that with confidence. I say that with boldness because you think about this feminist movement that I believe spearheaded all of this, right? Yeah. Jezebel, I believe, this principality came into America, right, for control and opened a door to perversion, right? I mean, okay, you got to look in the Bible and read the whole story of Jezebel, right? So basically, Jezebel came in, and you have to think too, and this is good for some of you watching, is Jezebel doesn't just operate in churches. She doesn't just operate in homes, right? But when you think about it, King Ahab married Jezebel. Jezebel likes to take control of nations. Wow. And crazy, right? Yeah. So Jezebel, she comes in, she marries King Ahab, and what follows? She brings in the worship of Astaroth. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, so forgive me or correct me in the comments. But she brings in the worship of Astaroth and Baal to Israel. Yeah. So Jezebel, she comes in, she marries King Ahab, she brings in the worship of these 2 false idols, Astaroth and Baal. And what does Astaroth represent? Perversion and prostitution. Wow. Literally, they would like erect these sexual like images and this disgusting stuff, and they would worship the god of Astaroth. Yeah. And so literally, like, Jezebel came in, she invited the spirit of perversion, right? Prostitution, all this stuff. And then you think about Baal, and what were they doing when they were worshiping Baal? They were straight killing babies. Yeah. And I mean, you see that birth control is introduced, and all of a sudden we have this huge cultural war and this cultural battle, like regarding abortion and regarding the killing of the unborn. And so these are the 2 spirits that Jezebel invites in. Jezebel, she comes in and she invites the worship of Astaroth and Baal. And this is exactly what happened in America when, I believe, through the feminist movement, Jezebel came in and she invited the worship of Astaroth, the sexual revolution, and Baal. Yeah. Because now, I mean, we see just recently the overturning of Roe versus Wade, which, I mean, was a huge victory, and we need to keep praying that God would turn this nation around. But literally, Jezebel came in to America, right? Because I said Jezebel deals with nations, right? She comes in and she likes to, she's a principality over nations. So Jezebel came in and literally invited the worship of these perverted and ugly things. And I believe that that's why where we're at today. Yeah.